Hello there. I started asking some really interesting, sharing actually some interesting questions, which were actually the questions that invited me into my research when I was writing my book, This Can't Be Normal. Why does building a bigger team often make leaders feel less alone? Right? Why do leaders become more indispensable as they become more exhausted? Why does being needed feel meaningful until it becomes suffocating? And a recent question that I started to play around with a little bit more is, why do some people hear feedback as information and some people hear it as an attack? Because if you've led a team for more than 5 minutes, you see this all the time, right? You sit down with an employee, you think you're going to have a very straightforward conversation, and you say something like, hey, I noticed the classroom wasn't reset at the end of the day yesterday. Straightforward facts. Or you say, the standard of parent communication of responding within 24 hours didn't happen yesterday. Or the incident report wasn't completed as part of our standards. And in your mind, you think you're discussing facts and behavior, but the conversation within like a nanosecond turns into emotional. The person in front of you gets defensive, fragile, tense. There's justifications, there are excuses, there are stories, there's tears, there's blame, there's finger pointing, there's victimhood, you name the cocktail, it's there. And you really prepared for this conversation, and you're sitting there and you're like, whoa, how did we get here? We were talking about an incident report. We were talking about a classroom. We were talking about the bathroom that wasn't cleaned. We were talking about a checklist. Why are we here? And so for years, many leaders, including myself, answered the question a lot of the same ways, right? Like, they're immature, they don't want accountability, maybe they don't care enough, they're not taking ownership. Some of those things could be true. But I actually think there's something much deeper that's happening here, because many accountability problems aren't actually accountability problems. They're identity problems. Okay. And I want to explain. And it's interesting because this is the 3rd episode on my podcast. By the way, we just celebrated 300 episodes on the Schools of Excellence podcast. Episode 3 on the podcast is where I talk about the gratitude matrix, and I explain what gratitude is from a place of identity and belonging. But this is interesting because I'm actually understanding a little bit of a deeper layer here, right? 10 years later, I hope I'm learning and evolving, right? And so when a leader says something to a teacher like, this report isn't complete, the staff member is hearing, you're irresponsible. When the leader says, this standard of bathroom cleaning wasn't followed through, the employee hears, you're failing. You're not good enough. And so the leader thinks they're discussing this behavior. The employee has their identity threatened, and identity always wins. Identity always wins. So, the conversation becomes about like, oh, they need to take accountability. We need to work on accountability. Oh my gosh, we need to work on accountability. For the love of God, you can't work on accountability. Okay. And I'll explain what you work on instead. Okay. Because I want to take you back for a little bit. Okay. Especially in childcare. We're in school, and we are taught from a very, very young age that your value and performance travel together. Good grades, good behavior, good evaluation, good results. And so you learn very, very quickly that being successful is very much connected to being worthy. Then you enter adulthood and you go and get a job in a industry that is all about caretaking and nurturing. Okay. You also enter an adulthood where society rewards promotions, raises, recognitions, performance reviews, blah, blah, blah. The lesson gets reinforced again and again and again. Now, when you take it further, we're people who choose professions that are helper professions, caregivers, nurturers, people who genuinely actually care about other people. Okay. When you talk to them about missing a ratio, that is not just tied to their competence. Now you're tying it to their inherent goodness, because this isn't just about they want to do a good job and they want to take care of the kids. They want to be a good person. They want to be a good teacher. They want to be a caring educator. They want to be a supportive teammate. Now, when the feedback You think it's about, I'm talking to you about your competence gap. No. You're threatening their goodness. Because when you tell them you forgot a task, they're thinking, I'm letting people down. I'm letting people down. I'm not who I thought I was. And so when accountability is a threat to who I am, I'm going to defend myself, right? They are incapable of having accountability because their body has no capacity to hold all of the shame that they're experiencing when you say this incident report wasn't completed. So they will explain, defame, justify, protect, all those things, okay? And so when I hear leaders say my people don't care, no, sweetheart, they care too much. I care so much that I cannot tolerate what this mistake says about me. And this is where our industry gets stuck, right? That's why I wrote my book, This Can't Be Normal, because we endlessly talk about accountability. Endlessly. Go to any workshop, go to any conference, go to any event, you will hear endless conversation on accountability. Endless conversation on accountability, okay? We talk about how to have more accountability and better accountability and how to hold people accountable and how to build cultures of accountability. But actually, we're starting in the middle. Accountability is not the beginning of the story. Accountability is the result of many other things. And this is where gratitude is the beginning of the conversation, right? This is why it is literally the third episode on my podcast. And we've recorded 300 episodes since then. But gratitude continuously gets to be misunderstood in this industry because till today, I talk about it till I'm blue in the face. Leaders look at gratitude as boosting morale and making sure people feel appreciated. And let me create a positive culture and let me boost engagement. No. Gratitude builds identity, right? So it does some of those things, appreciation, engagement, blah, blah, blah. Gratitude builds identity because every time a leader says, I notice what you did. I appreciated the effort that you put into this. I see your contribution to this company. You actually continuously enforce a stable sense of self-worth because every time you actually communicate real gratitude, you tell the person, you matter here. Your actions matter here. Your actions impact other people here. You have value here. You are seen here. You are way more than your most previous mistake. And when people have a strong sense of worth, they can tolerate accountability. Because when someone has a strong sense of worth, they hear, you miss the standard as, oh, okay, I can face reality without collapsing. I can see the reality of my mistake without collapsing my entire sense of worth. I can actually go and have a repair conversation instead of defending, right? So instead of justifying and explaining, they can grow. Now, the irony of all of this is that the leaders who desperately want accountability the most often spend all of their time talking about what's wrong, what's missing, what needs fixing, what needs improvement. And they wonder why people get defensive. When every interaction communicates that someone's value is constantly on a courtroom trial, they will protect themselves. But when their value is secure, they build capacity to hear hard truths. Reality. Right? So gratitude and accountability are actually two sides of the exact same coin. Gratitude is what makes accountability possible because accountability requires something most people never think about. It requires a person to actually see, I am a person of value and worth, and I still make mistakes because I am human and I can survive imperfection. And so I want to invite you, as you wrap up this week, to think about a different question. Right now, the question that most of you are asking is, how do I hold people accountable? What if you asked a different question? What if you asked, how do I create an environment where people can face reality and the truth about themselves without losing themselves in the process? What kind of environment do I need to create? Because when you create that environment, accountability is not a threat. It's actually growth. And it's beautiful because people step up and surprise you in the most beautiful ways possible. Let me know in the comments what you think. I'm actually curious to hear some other thoughts. You can DM us also just an interesting, different perspective on accountability.